The room fell deathly silent as the lawyer read the final line of the will out loud. Adriel stared down at the single crisp dollar bill that had been placed in front of him on the polished mahogany table, his chest tightening as the reality sank in. His father, the man who had built an empire from nothing, had left him exactly $1. Nothing more. The words, "for services rendered," were scribbled next to it in the old man's familiar handwriting. Around the table, his uncles and cousins erupted into laughter, the kind that cut like shards of glass. "Guess that's all a guy like you deserves." One of them snorted, not even bothering to lower his voice. "After all the shame you brought on this family." Adriel's face burned. He could feel the weight of their stares, the same judgmental looks he had received since the day he came out at 19. Being gay wasn't just a disappointment in their eyes. It was a betrayal. And raising Ethan alone after his partner passed away 3 years ago only made it worse in their book. The 6-year-old boy sat quietly beside him, small hand clutching Adriel's sleeve, sensing the tension but not understanding why everyone was laughing at his dad. The lawyer cleared his throat, a tall man with sharp features and dark hair who had introduced himself earlier as Roman Hale. He had been professional throughout the reading, his expression unreadable. "The formal proceedings are concluded," Roman said calmly, gathering the papers. "If the rest of you would excuse us, Mr. Adriel and I have some additional matters to discuss regarding the estate." The relatives grumbled but filed out, still chuckling and throwing pitying glances back at Adriel. Once the door clicked shut, the atmosphere in the office shifted. Roman leaned forward, his eyes meeting Adriel's with an intensity that felt strangely familiar. "That dollar was your father's final statement, Adriel. But it wasn't the whole story. He left something else. Something he didn't want them to know about." Adriel blinked, trying to process the words. "What are you talking about? If this is some kind of joke." "It's no joke," Roman interrupted gently. "Your father set up a separate trust years ago. He made me the executor because he trusted that I would only reveal it under the right circumstances. I've been managing it discreetly. If you're willing, I can take you to see it right now. It's about an hour's drive from here." Ethan looked up at his father, his big brown eyes curious. "Are we going on an adventure, Dad?" Adriel hesitated. Part of him wanted to walk away from anything connected to the man who had disowned him. But the other part, the one exhausted from scraping by as a high school teacher in suburban Los Angeles, needed to know. "Fine," he said finally. "Show me." The drive along the California coast was quiet at first. Roman's black SUV hummed smoothly along the Pacific Highway, the ocean sparkling to their right under the bright afternoon sun. Adriel sat in the passenger seat, Ethan dozing in the back after the emotional morning. He stole glances at Roman, wondering why the lawyer's presence felt like it stirred up old memories. There was something about the set of his jaw, the way he gripped the wheel. "You knew my father well?" Adriel asked eventually. Roman's lips pressed into a thin line. "Better than most. He contacted me specifically a few years back. Said he had regrets but didn't know how to fix them. The asset I'm taking you to, it's more than just property. It's a chance for you and Ethan to have the stability he never gave you when he was alive." As they turned off the main road onto a private lane lined with tall eucalyptus trees, Adriel's heart began to race. The gates opened automatically, revealing rolling hills covered in neat rows of grapevines stretching as far as the eye could see. In the distance stood a grand Spanish-style villa, its white walls glowing in the sunlight, surrounded by gardens bursting with color. It looked like something from a dream, not the kind of place connected to his rigid, conservative father. Roman parked the car and turned off the engine. "Welcome to your hidden inheritance, Adriel. This is Vista Verde Vineyard. 200 acres, fully operational, and it's all in a trust for you and your son." Adriel stepped out, the warm breeze carrying the scent of earth and ripening grapes. He felt dizzy, the contrast between the morning's humiliation and this breathtaking sight too sharp to comprehend. Ethan woke up and ran ahead, laughing as he chased a butterfly across the lawn. For the first time in years, Adriel allowed himself a small spark of hope. But as Roman stood beside him, watching with those knowing eyes, Adriel couldn't shake the feeling that this discovery was only the beginning of something much larger than money or land. The past was about to collide with the present, and he wasn't sure if he was ready for what it would bring. Roman gestured toward the villa's wide veranda, his voice steady but warm. "Come inside. There's more to see, and I think your father left something personal for you." Adriel followed, Ethan skipping beside them, the boy's excitement a small bomb against the whirlwind inside Adriel's chest. The interior was even more impressive. High ceilings with exposed beams, sunlight streaming through arched windows onto tiled floors that spoke of decades of careful upkeep. Roman led them to a sunlit study lined with books and framed photos of vineyards through the seasons. On the massive oak desk sat a sealed envelope with Adriel's name written in his father's bold script. Adriel's hands trembled as he opened it, the paper crackling like old memories. The letter was short but piercing. "Son, if you're reading this, you've made it this far. The dollar was my last test. I never knew how to say I was wrong about you, about what it means to be a man. This place was my way of making amends without the family tearing it apart. Live here if you can. Build something real. Dad." Adriel sank into a leather chair, the words blurring. All those years of silence, the holidays spent alone with Ethan, the quiet nights questioning if his choices had ruined his son's future. And now this. Roman poured 2 glasses of water from a crystal pitcher and handed one over, his presence calm and steady. "He told me about you more than once. Said you were stronger than he ever was. You seem to know a lot about our family," Adriel said, wiping his eyes quickly so Ethan wouldn't notice from the garden window where he was exploring. Roman paused, then sat across from him. "We met in law school years ago, actually. You were a teaching assistant in one of my undergrad classes. I remembered you right away when your father hired me. The way you carried yourself, even back then, dealing with the world not quite ready for who you were." Adriel looked up, a faint recognition clicking into place. Roman had been the quiet guy in the back row, always polite, always watching. Now here he was, the bridge to this impossible gift. They spent the afternoon touring the property, Roman explaining the operations. The winery that turned a steady profit, the staff who lived in cottages on the grounds, the trust fund set aside for Ethan's education. Ethan ran through the vines, his laughter echoing, and Adriel felt a crack in the armor he'd built around his heart. By evening, they sat on the porch as the sun dipped behind the hills, painting the sky in oranges and pinks. Roman shared stories of his own coming out, the family that eventually came around after years of distance. "It doesn't erase the pain," he said softly, "but it lets you breathe again." Adriel nodded, feeling seen for the first time in ages. Yet doubt lingered. What would the family say when they learned about this? How could he, a gay single dad still figuring out how to balance teaching and parenting, run a place like this? Roman seemed to sense the turmoil. "You don't have to decide tonight. Stay a few days. See if it fits." As they prepared simple rooms in the villa, Adriel watched Ethan fall asleep under crisp sheets, the boy's face peaceful in a way it hadn't been in their cramped apartment. The decision wasn't just about money anymore. It was about giving Ethan roots, about proving to himself that love and identity didn't have to be at war. But as Roman said goodnight from the hallway, their eyes meeting a beat longer than necessary, Adriel wondered if the hidden asset included more than land and vines. It felt like the start of a path he had long avoided, one that might finally lead somewhere he belonged. The next morning brought golden light filtering through the vineyard leaves, and Adriel woke to the sound of Ethan giggling in the kitchen with Roman. The lawyer had prepared pancakes, a simple gesture that made the grand house feel almost like home. Over coffee, Roman outlined the next steps. Paperwork to transfer management, meetings with the vineyard manager, a chance for Adriel to step into a role he'd never imagined. "Your father wanted you to have choices he never gave himself," Roman explained, his tone careful. "He never said it, but I think he envied your courage." Adriel spent the day walking the rows with Ethan, the boy asking endless questions about grapes and wine. It was easy to picture a life here, away from the judgmental stares back in the city. But when his phone rang mid-afternoon, the peace shattered. It was his brother Derek. "You think you can just take everything? That fancy lawyer of yours is playing you. Dad would roll over if he saw a guy like you running his legacy." The call ended with threats of a contest, and Adriel's stomach knotted. He had barely processed the gift, and already the family was circling. Roman found him on the terrace, shoulders tense. "They'll try to fight it. The trust is ironclad, but they won't go quietly." Their conversation stretched into evening, Roman sharing how he had quietly advocated for Adriel during the trust setup, pushing back against the old man's initial doubts. "I told him you deserved more than scraps." The honesty hung between them, stirring something Adriel hadn't felt in years. The warmth of being understood by another man who walked the same road. They didn't touch, but the space between them felt charged with possibility. Ethan bonded quickly with Roman, asking him to read bedtime stories about brave explorers. As Adriel watched from the doorway, a quiet misunderstanding arose when Derek texted a group family message accusing Roman of influencing the fag for his own gain. Adriel deleted it before Ethan could see, but the words stung. Later, on the porch with Roman, he voiced the fear. "What if they're right? What if I'm just running from one cage to another?" Roman listened without judgment, his voice low. "You're not running. You're choosing. And whatever you decide, Ethan sees a dad who's trying." The night ended with a simple promise to face the coming storm together. The first real alliance Adriel had felt since losing his partner. The vineyard's quiet beauty wrapped around them, but Adriel knew the real test was just beginning. Word of the inheritance spread like wildfire through the family network, and within days the threats turned real. Derek filed papers to contest the trust, claiming Adriel was unfit due to his lifestyle choices, and that the asset rightfully belonged to the legitimate heirs. Adriel received the notice while helping Ethan with homework in the villa's sunroom, the legal jargon blurring as anger and fear collided. He had sacrificed so much already. Friends who drifted away after coming out, jobs that slipped through fingers because of whispered rumors, nights alone wondering if Ethan would grow up ashamed of him. Roman drove them to the lawyer's office in the city for the initial hearing prep, the three of them silent in the car. At school pickup the next day, Ethan came home with tears in his eyes. Kids said Dad's a bad person because of the money and other stuff. The bullying hit Adriel like a punch. He pulled his son close, the internal crisis swelling. Was this the life he was building? More judgment, more pain for the boy who deserved only love? That night, alone in the study, Adriel stared at his father's letter, questioning every choice. "Maybe I should walk away," he whispered to the empty room. "Give them the vineyard. Keep Ethan safe." Roman knocked softly, entering with 2 mugs of tea. They sat in silence at first, then the words poured out. Adriel's years of hiding parts of himself to protect his son, the loneliness that never quite left. Roman shared his own scars, the family who had slowly accepted him only after he proved success on his terms. "Sacrifice isn't always giving up," Roman said. "Sometimes it's standing your ground." Their hands brushed, reaching for the same book on the table, a quiet moment of connection that lingered. But doubt won that night. Adriel lay awake, torn between the freedom the estate offered and the peace he feared it would cost his son. The crisis peaked when Derek showed up unannounced at the gates, demanding a tour and spewing accusations. Adriel met him at the door, Ethan safely inside with Roman. "You always took the easy road," Derek sneered. "Now you're stealing what we earned." The confrontation left Adriel drained, questioning if forgiveness was possible or even deserved. As the sun set over the vines, he felt the weight of every decision pressing down, the path forward murky and filled with the risk of losing more than he had already gained. The court date loomed, and Adriel threw himself into preparing, poring over documents with Roman late into the nights. Misunderstandings multiplied. A leaked photo of Roman and Adriel on the porch sparked family rumors of manipulation. forcing Adriel to explain to Ethan that some people feared what they didn't understand. The boy nodded bravely, but the strain showed. Adriel faced the hardest choice yet during a private meeting with Roman. "If fighting this hurts Ethan more, I should drop it," he said, voice cracking. Roman's response was measured, eyes steady. "You've spent your life protecting him by hiding. Maybe now you show him strength by standing up." The emotional turning point came on a rainy afternoon when they drove to the city for mediation. In the car, Roman opened up fully about the pull he had felt since their college days, how helping with the trust had been more than duty. Adriel listened, heart racing, admitting the same quiet attraction that had grown amid the chaos. It wasn't dramatic, just honest words between two men who had both known rejection. Yet Adriel pulled back, the old fear winning. "I can't risk dragging you into my mess." The sacrifice felt necessary, even as it hurt. Back at the vineyard, the family made one last push, offering a settlement if Adriel signed away rights. He refused, the decision born of newfound resolve after seeing Ethan's proud smile when they toured the winery together. Roman respected the space, but his support never wavered. The climax built as they prepared for the final hearing, Adriel realizing the true inheritance wasn't the land but the courage to claim his life openly. Misunderstandings cleared in a late-night talk where Roman said simply, "You've already won by being the dad Ethan needs." The tension peaked, but so did the clarity, pushing Adriel toward the light he had long denied himself. The courtroom buzzed with tension, but Adriel stood tall as the judge reviewed the ironclad trust. Derek's arguments crumbled under the evidence Roman presented, years of documentation proving the old man's intent. When the gavel fell in Adriel's favor, the relief washed over him like the California sun. The family filed out in defeat, Derek muttering one last barb, but Adriel felt no triumph, only quiet closure. Back at Vista Verde, he gathered Ethan on the porch. "We get to stay, buddy. This is ours now." The boy hugged him tight, whispering, "I knew you were the strongest dad ever." Roman joined them as the evening cooled, the three sharing a simple dinner under string lights in the garden. The bond that had grown through every trial felt solid now, not rushed but earned. Adriel turned to Roman after Ethan went to bed, the words finally free. "I was scared for so long, but you showed me it's okay to build something real." Their embrace in the blooming garden was gentle, full of the promise of shared tomorrows. No grand gestures needed, just two men who had found home in each other and in the life they chose. Months later, the vineyard thrived under Adriel's hands, Ethan flourishing in a new school where acceptance was the norm. Adriel had grown, the internal storms quieted by the daily choice to live authentically. Roman stayed by his side, their relationship deepening through quiet support and shared laughter. The hidden asset had delivered far more than wealth. It had unlocked the freedom to love without apology. True or false? The only way for a gay man to find peace is to forgive the family that rejected him.